exercise. They participated, the helicopters participated in this refueling exercise, and it's about 900 miles from Israel to where this nuclear reactor is going to be built. Of course, the Israelis do not want the Iranians to build a nuclear reactor because they feel that if the Iranians get the bomb, the first thing they'll do is use it on Israel. And one would be hard-pressed to find a reason why we shouldn't believe that, with the likes of Ahmadinejad saying Israel is a stinking corpse or Israel is a cancer soon to be irradiated.
Let me ask you a question about that. Somebody sent me an email last week and said everything he says is in Farsi and it's being changed and manipulated and given to the American media. He doesn't mean that. He's not saying that. I don't know, but have you heard that?
I have heard a little bit about that before. I have not done any investigation. Obviously, I don't speak Farsi. It seems like if it was really like this, if the quotes were being somehow taken out of context, then I would assume, and I've been on other websites which would have some sort of a very strong rebuttal to that.
And I haven't seen that either.
It just I'm not seeing that. What I'm seeing is in fact, in my book Politics, Prophecies, and Supernatural, I list a whole series of quotes. There's a website that's actually devoted to monitoring Mr. Ahmadinejad and his vitriol against Israel. I mean, in my opinion, there can be no doubt that when he says quotes like Israel is a dry withered tree soon to be uprooted by its roots and cast into the sea. There's another article which actually hit tonight, and again, it's like, I'm looking at this. Can I verify it? Can't verify it. But it's an exclusive. It's from the Debka file. It says Iran hails Gaza ceasefire for tightening noose around Israel. And it talks about this whole idea of Hezbollah taking over Beirut and now Syria, and they're going to transfer nuclear technology will begin, according to this article, as soon as July 7th. So what's interesting about this ties into a prophecy, which we've talked about before, George, Ezekiel 38 and 39, 2,500-year-old prophecy, which talks about this Confederacy of Nations. And again, it's very, very specific. It talks about in the latter days, in the end times, and it uses that phrase. Now, I don't know what that means, except that if all of a sudden these nations seem to be forming this coalition, which the prophecy talks about, and the first one is Russia, the second one is Iran. 50 years ago, Iran was certainly not a military power that it is today, and sort of a laughingstock. I mean, it was just a backward country, and petrodollars and everything has changed, and it's well armed and well trained, as we know.
Because of us.
Well, some because of us, but also because of the Russians. And look, I mean, when we get in the Middle East,
we gave them those fighter jets. Of course, we didn't give them the parts.
I agree. We armed Iraq. Let's face it. I mean, we armed Iraq during the Iraq-Iran war, and the Russians armed Iran. So it's like
it's like a game, isn't it? It is just like a game.
Well, this is
Stratego.
If I can skip a little bit, this is the whole crux of the book I'm working on, which talks about this Luciferian dialectic. And I'm a conspiratologist in the sense that I do believe in conspiracies, and I believe some of these conspiracies are thousands of years old and they're playing out now.
Sure.
But I believe that there is an evil presence. There's a hierarchy. There's this fallen being, call him Lucifer, if you will, and I believe he's the guy that's behind all this thing, and his minions that are working with him. And again, this ties in, once again back in the book of Revelation, the whole idea of this great war in heaven. And it says, one of the good guys kicks this guy out of the heavenlies, and he now is stuck in the space-time continuum. Right now, he's not. He's able to come in and out of our space-time continuum. Hence the whole idea of interdimensional spirit beings. So he can come in. He has access anytime he wants. But for some reason, he gets kicked down here, and he knows his time is short. Now he's stuck in this time-space continuum. And the prophecy says, woe to the inhabitants of earth, because this creature has been kicked out, is now on the earth, and he knows his time is short. So are we in those days? Are we in the days that Ezekiel 38 talks about, with this Confederacy of Nations coming up against the land of unwalled villages? And, your listeners have to make up their own mind. What I find incredibly fascinating is that it details the nations that are listed, and that's what we see forming today. We see these nations lining up against Israel. And the prophecy never could have happened until Israel was regathered into its ancient homeland. We just read Amos 9. There's another prophecy, Ezekiel 37, which talks about this regathering of Israel from the four corners of the earth, which we see has happened. I mean, you can Google that and you can see Jews coming in from Russia and China, Ethiopia, certain parts of Africa, and of course all of Europe, from literally all over the known world, even India, all over the known world as we know it, and coming back and resettling their ancient homeland. I mean, historically, it's unprecedented. Nothing like this has ever happened. Another interesting thing, it talks about their language being resurrected, and we see the ancient language of Hebrew, which was a dead language. It was like us all of a sudden deciding that, hey, let's all start speaking Latin and resurrect Latin from the dead, and that's precisely what happened. Now people speak in Hebrew. So this stuff is happening, and look, I'm just one guy looking at this. I have a worldview, and my paradigm looks at this stuff and goes, oh my gosh, it's happening. Not only is it happening, it seems to be accelerating with movies like Spielberg's, getting back to that, which seem to be touting the so-called, what I call the coming great deception, the alien agenda, which is that we created you, that we're the ones that genetically manipulated you 30,000 years ago. So it's so multifaceted. And that can sound like, a wide-eyed fanatical statement. But when you start breaking it down into specific prophecies, like, wars and rumors of wars and famines and pestilence and all these different things, are we in the time that these ancient prophecies are talking about? And I believe that we are.
You also talk about the mark of the beast. Mm-hmm. Tell me about that. Why?
Another article. Amazing. I mean, this stuff comes in like every other day. I'm getting another piece of the puzzle, so to speak, that tightens it up. Sources from inside the 2008 Bilderberger meeting have leaked the details of what elitists were discussing in Virginia last week. And the talking points were ominous. A plan to microchip Americans under the pretext of fighting terrorist groups, which will be identified as blonde-haired, blue-eyed Westerners. So here's the deal. We know about Digital Angel, okay? Is that the mark of the beast right now? I would say no. It's not the mark of the beast. Could it be the mark of the beast later on?
Yes.
In my opinion, it could be. It fits the description where we're no only able to buy, sell, or trade. Remember, I mean, what's bizarre about this prophecy, this thing is 2,000 years old. It's so flippin' specific. And 100 years ago, you'd look at that. This is why people couldn't understand it. And it says these books were closed until the end time.
So what do you think the event will be, Lynn, to get us all chipped? I'm not going to do it. You're not going to do it. But they're going to try to chip us all.
Yeah, they will.
What will they say to trick us? Will they say terrorism, that we need to identify you so you're safe, you're protected, so you can buy, so you can get on a plane? We need to chip you. Is that what they're going to do?
That's what this article talks about. It talks about blonde-haired, blue-eyed Westerners, basically Al-Qaeda operatives. In Politics, Prophecy, and Supernatural, I outline a scenario which has been researched, and that is that we've got 2 to 20 suitcase nukes, they being Al-Qaeda, terrorists, Iranians, who knows? Between 2 and 20 suitcase nukes already in the country that's embedded. And when these things go off, it'll be a coordinated attack. At the same time they hit Israel, they'll hit us. Could be wrong in that. It's a scenario. But it's based on some pretty interesting, facts and talking to other people and reading other resource material. They seem to be here. I remember a couple of Christmases ago, and some of your listeners might remember this. It was like 2 or 3 Christmases ago. There was this big, most of the news media carried it. They found these huge tunnels at the Mexico-U.S. border. They were so large that you could drive a truck through them. And this, of course, my source actually was a friend of mine who had the source. He couldn't divulge the source. He told me that they actually intercepted a live nuke. Now, I can't prove that, but what I did find interesting was this is an awful ambitious smuggling tunnel, with this. I mean, you could drive a pickup truck through this thing. And they apparently intercepted a live nuke that came up through the southern border. Whether or not that's true or not, the government's certainly not going to tell us that. That would cause mass panic. But I do know this. Some sort of an event like 20 Katrinas happening in this on U.S. soil, God forbid, 5 to 10 dirty bombs going off, people would line up and get chipped overnight because they would want their security. So, I mean, again, and here's the deal. what force is really pushing this agenda? People, say, well, it's the Bilderbergers, it's the Masons, it's this, it's the CFR, it's the Trilateralists. I mean, they go on and on.
The Illuminati,
Illuminati,
they may be.
and all that's part of it. But in my opinion, there's an overriding force that pushes all that. They're all parts of the same, they're all tentacles of the same body. And it's a Luciferian agenda. It's very precise where this